Playing you, Power 98, Love Songs.
Welcome back to The Glow Up. Joanna Francois here with you today. It's my third episode already with Joanna Dong. As they say, Joannas have more fun together. Today we're going even deeper. Joanna has recently faced some negative comments online, and negative comments are normal in our everyday lives too. Jo's got some tips on how you can deal with criticism and why it's better to just be your genuine self. Let's get into it. Well, I think what I have seen so far, listening to you as you started young, you've had people that you've grown because of, like your family. You've been in collaboration with amazing artists, and you've not just left them. You've grown, and I think I think part of
I have
just try to wrap my head around all of this right now. I think part of glowing up or growing into yourself, I think, is also recognizing your own self-worth, whatever that looks like for the individual. And I think that can also come in the form of standing up for yourself, being true, even amongst negative voices. So I wanted to ask you, because you've been so open online with your experiences with people who are naysayers, they're not very nice. You've shared your truth, your feelings, your opinions about it. And I think a lot of people can see themselves in you. So in our lives, when we experience people who deliberately put us down, how can we better deal with situations like this?
Well, and here's the thing, right? I am actually awful, or I have been, in my personal history, very bad with dealing with rejection, dealing with criticism. But it is precisely because I've been bad at it that I have learned it step by step. And I think that's why I have any advice at all to offer. Because I think some people, they really are able to let these things just slide off their back. They just are very self-assured or secure. Or they're blasé, so they genuinely don't care. And I really envy them, but I'm not like that. I always care too much. And in many ways, I've always felt like that stunted my growth as an artist. Because when you care too much about what everybody else thinks, it's very, very hard to really know what you want and who you want to be. And for most of my career, I was just trying to be someone whom I thought other people will approve of, I tried to be as professional, as diligent, as whatever, everything that would check boxes, except really follow my own genuine impulses. And I remember when I was, at a theater rehearsal or a theater workshop, and I was asking some questions about the improvisation process. And the director, she shot a phrase at me that really shook me to the core. And she says, "Why do you have to be such a good student?" And when she said good student, I know she said it with disdain.
I can hear it in my head right now.
Yes. And I was genuinely very troubled and upset by that. I felt like all I was trying to do was to understand the exercise and the purpose of the exercise. And she was like, "No, I just want you to follow your impulse. Don't ask questions. Just do what you want or do what feels right in the moment." And I was like, I don't know how to. And that was a rough awakening for me. And I've been trying to strike a good balance then, since then. Now I have come to a point where if somebody were to say the same thing to me, I would be able to say to them, well, but what if being a good student is exactly who I am and who I want to be?
Yeah.
But that took me a decade, to arrive at, the level of self-assuredness that I have today. But yeah, I have moments of insecurity, of vulnerability, but I have also learned that I can just be quiet about it and just, ignore it. Like many people were telling me to in the comments, just ignore the naysayers, just do yourself. But I believe that we can truly influence each other, and we can really always talk to each other and slowly but surely effect some kind of social change. And if I do not engage, or if I do not respond, then nothing is going to change.
Yeah.
So I try to be very, very selective with when I do respond. So in the recent case, which I think you were alluding to, the comments were to me really groundless and also very, very unnecessarily harsh. So I can completely respect if it is a difference in opinion. If they didn't like it, that's all right. But you don't need to be cruel. You don't need to be insulting.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think that is unnecessary. And I genuinely want to read the comments because I want to learn from the feedback.
Of course.
But people like that who, basically are asking to be ignored, make it hard for everybody else's constructive comments to be read and received and acted upon.
Yeah.
And so I would rather not ignore comments. I would rather we all have a great conversation about it. But it's exhausting, I think, to try and engage every single person, right?
Yeah.
And of course, they might be struggling with something that, I don't know. The pandemic is a tough time and there's no other outlet. So maybe taking it out on somebody who's just a public figure just feels like a cathartic thing to do. I understand. But I'm just saying, hey, I felt that,
Yeah.
just to let them know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being so honest. I think it's very rare that we do have, public figures who are vulnerable about how they feel when these situations arise. I think on an everyday level, when it comes to maybe interpersonal relationships online with, maybe just an example I can pull out of my head, kids who might get bullied online or, have people say negative things to them. How do you handle that? And I think the best person to ask would be someone like you who's gone through this, who acknowledges, it's difficult. It is, and to come up with different ways to cope and to acknowledge that I'm on my way, and I'm gonna get there one day. But meanwhile, this is how I deal, and yeah, I also respect that. Yeah.
Well, I don't exist in a vacuum, and the reason why I can now at this point in my life be more honest or speak up more about this is because of all the people who have come before me. This conversation has slowly shifted to this, and it's less taboo to be honest, be vulnerable, to admit that you need to, draw some healthy boundaries. For example, tennis player Naomi Osaka recently, said very publicly that she just needs to take a break from the post-game interview for her mental health. So it's all these, things that accumulate. And also, people like yourself who, when I am vulnerable to you, you receive it with so much grace and sensitivity. And it's just exactly like this. And the more conversations that you and I have, or we have with other people that are of this nature, then I really do believe we can all start to have better civil discourse.
I agree too. I think, like you said, because times are changing, because hopefully they are moving towards a little more graciousness in society as well, it was the perfect time. And I think if you're listening in right now and, you may have faced something like this before, hope you take heart in Joanna's experience as well, and to know that it is okay to draw lines for yourself. It's actually really important. And maybe I want to ask you as well, what kind of tips, Jo, we can take away to prioritize our mental health when other people want to try and put us down?
I think when you hear or read something that's really hurtful, firstly, to really understand, why was that hurtful? What exactly does that tell me about my state? Because you can really, there's very little you can do to control what other people say or write. Yeah. But you can try and manage your own responses. So, for example, when people say, "Oh, you were awful, you destroyed the song," why was I so upset about that? And then I realized, oh, it was because I actually really felt good after performing that. I personally thought it was a great performance, and so the cognitive dissonance between what I felt and what somebody else interpreted was a big shock. Yeah. And of course, also, it was a long time, before I had a big performance, of that on that kind of platform. And so it felt like it suddenly meant a lot to me. If I had been having lots of shows every week, I probably wouldn't have had time to worry about it.
Yeah.
But suddenly, because I have been so deprived of performing opportunities at that level, I felt, that it was just really painful to have people think that it was awful.
Yeah.
And then, of course, also, it's pride. I think of myself as a decent singer, but people tell me I was terrible. And again, that hurt me. And so as I slowly unpacked why I was hurt, I asked myself, well, what can I do to make up for those parts of me that were hurting? I talked to my husband, who of course has always reassured me that I'm a great singer.
Yes.
And I talked to my colleagues, my manager, and she says, but you've put in the best work we've done. The team is so proud of you. So I try and find affirmation. But also, if I needed to vent, then I vented. So I felt like, okay, I needed some kind of payback. So I tried to do it in as civil as possible. So I ranted on my IG stories, knowing that it, will only be there for 24 hours. I don't know how long the IG stories last, but they're meant to be temporal. Of course, I had no idea it was going to be picked up by the news, but never mind, that's another story. If you're not a public personality, you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so that's good. The main thing, the one last thing I would say is allow yourself to vent. Allow yourself to feel what you feel. So if you're angry, let yourself go there. Acknowledge it. But also put a limit to how much you indulge these emotions. So I told myself, I'm going to rant, I'm going to be upset about this, but I give myself maximum 2 days to be very upset, and then I really have to just let this go.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's one way, I cope.
I really relate to that. Again, I feel like I've said this a few times now in this podcast, but I have also just recently started reading a little bit more about mindfulness. And again, making sure that you only set a little limit to how much you indulge in these feelings. But of course, stewing those feelings for a while is definitely allowed. You should allow yourself.
Oh, yes. Don't repress it. I think repression is actually far more dangerous and far more detrimental to your mental health in the long run. It's also detrimental to the people around you because they don't know how to respond.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've never told them that this thing upsets you, how can you expect them to know how to better behave or watch their words when they're around you? So this is a communication process. And I also have myself to blame if I've never told people that I mind, right? These comments, I mind it. So now that I've put it out there, I mind it. The next time you tell it to my face, well, then you can expect that I'll be upset. This will not be news anymore. Right?
Yeah. I think even though this was a public sort of example, the coping ways that you had just mentioned are very, very relevant to the way that we communicate between people like our parents, our siblings. If you don't say that these things hurt you, they're just going to continue happening, even though they don't want to hurt you. And thank you for those tips.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed that conversation. Next week is my final installment with Joanna Dong. So I'll catch you back here. The Glow Up drops every Wednesday at 8 a.m. So have a great week ahead.
Best of Love Songs, Power 98.